Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to From Bathtubs to Backyards and Beyond, a parent's guide to safer swim. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's going to be a great presentation. We have Dr. Daniel Camilleri from Allied Physicians Group's Nassau Pediatric Associates Office in Franklin Square. We have the safety swim team here that I am going to let them introduce themselves and give their background, but we are so excited to have you. This is such an important topic. It is getting warmer outside and we want to make sure that we keep our kids safe. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us today on the webinar. We are so excited to spend time with you guys and discuss the strategies that we can help families build so that their kiddos can be safer around the water and pretty much in all water environments. Today's focus is about preparation and confidence, not fear. We're definitely going to open your eyes to some things, but we don't want you to walk away with fear. We definitely want you to walk away empowered. So we're going to get started. So I'm Shiona. I am the Senior Director of Operations for Safety Swim. I've been in the business for about 15 years, since I was 15. I'm dating myself here. Lifeguarding and swim instructing was my very first job. I loved it. It's a great business model. It definitely, we're saving lives, and it's just treated me so well throughout my career. And Safety Swim, if you're from Long Island, if you've been on the island, you've definitely heard of Safety Swim. We've been around for over 40 years, and what we do is really amazing, and it's just a great company to work with. So what we're going to be talking about today, not just safety or not just water safety, we want to talk about health, safety, and preventative measures, because this is all a preventative issue that we're talking about. I'm going to be presenting or approaching drowning prevention from an education point of view. And we're going to do this through a layered protection point of view, water competency, as well as give all of the parents tricks and tips on how you can just stay water safe, and your entire family can stay water safe, and your kiddos as well. So when we first think about water safety, we approach this as a community effort, similar to how we're joining here today. We have our parents, we have our pediatricians, our caregivers, our swim educators, schools, community organizations. We all play a role in helping our children stay safer around the water, because drowning prevention is strongest when we can have consistent messages in all the places that we already trust. You trust your pediatrician, you trust your swim instructor, you trust your teachers, you trust the community that you're involved in. So when our education and our supervision and skill building and access to water, when they all work together, we're building stronger families, stronger communities that can, again, prevent drowning. This entire presentation, I want us to continue to look at it through the layer of prevention. We want to be proactive, not reactive. So everything we're doing is so that we can make sure we're preventing drowning. It's a shared responsibility, right? When we talk about community, I want to be very specific, and I want to frame this around how we're approaching this. Because responsibility it doesn't lie with just the parents, it doesn't lie with just the educators or the pediatricians. We all work hand in hand with this. Our pediatricians are going to help guide prevention, give us developmental education, anticipatory guidance. Families, you, mom and dad, you shape the supervision, their environment, the habits, the access that we have. And then your swim community, your water schools, we have education. We build water competency. We're teaching kiddos how to self-rescue. So this prevention becomes strongest when all three reinforce one another, because that's where awareness becomes behavior. And then that behavior, again, it goes into the prevention, what we're working towards. So we're going to show you a video. And in this video, it's going to call your attention to something. And again, not to scare you, but we want to let you know that drowning can be subtle. Sometimes we get an image of drowning in our head and it's loud, on media or on television. We see wailing and screaming. And what we want to impress upon all of our parents is that drowning doesn't always make noise. So again, we have to make sure we're looking for the right thing, that we aren't distracted, that we are present. So when we watch this video, I want you to take those things in and think about it. So again, the point of this video is not to create fear. It's to correct the mental picture. Because if we correct that mental picture, then now we can be more present to the risk. Okay? This is what helps us prevent drowning. So the CDC identifies drowning as the leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 4. This is what we're preventing. We're preventing our kiddos from the ages of 1 to 4 drowning, right? Drownings don't happen because no one was present. Many times it's going to happen when adults are nearby. We need to be able to see the signs. We need to be able to recognize them quickly. And because our attention can shift so briefly, we have to make sure we have a plan. We have to make sure that we're proactive, again, not reactive. And this is something that, again, is 100% preventable if we all play our parts together. I also want to clear up some miscommunications, right? So many of the things family believe about water safety are really based on this false sense of security. We assume that because we're watching, our children are safe. But again, supervision can break in seconds. We assume that if our child has had lessons, they're protected. But just because we build skills do not mean we mitigate or eliminate risk. We tell ourselves we're only stepping away for a minute, but a brief lapse risk appears when we have these brief lapses. We may think shallow water is not a concern. When we think about the bathtubs, they are a concern. Our kiddos, drowning can happen in very little water. And then we have our floaties and our water wings, and we love them, and they give us this sense of comfort and independence, but they also build dependence, and they don't build real, true water competencies. So we want to clear up some of those misconceptions. And then we have one more that we discuss around dry drowning. So we hear this term, we hear dry drowning, and I don't want to give you anxiety. I know it creates anxiety in parents, and it's important for us to know, and I believe one of our partners is going to speak on this as well, is that it's not a formal diagnosis, but what from the swimming education community we want to talk to you about is what you should look for, right? We want to look for signs of breathing difficulty or respiratory distress. Respiratory distress. If your child is having a problem, there are typically going to be signs. You'll have this persistent cough or trouble breathing, unusual fatigue, or behavior changes. And those are signs that will usually appear within hours, not days. Sometimes it's a misconception that days pass and this progresses. So I want to make sure, and I'll ask for a little support here, that we understand what dry drowning really entails, and that yes, we should be concerned about it, but we also have to know the right information as well.
Hey, Shona. Yeah. As a pediatrician, I do get a lot of parents who, come to me days later after, the kid was playing in a pool, maybe coughing at that time, and it seems fine 2 or 3 days later, but they have so much fear and anxiety about, is my child gonna pass away in their sleep? And I think, one of the things that I always kind of tell parents is, what matters, medically is watching for breathing problems after the water incident. And I think there's a lot of social media hype around the whole dry drowning concept. Dry
Yeah.
drowning is not a diagnosis. The CDC and the American Heart Association don't recognize it as a term. But I think, the evaluation right after a near drowning or anything like that, water exposure, is the most important thing over those several hours. The cough, the shortness of breath, the agitation, those are the kind of things that we're always looking for and concerned about. It's not days later after they've been perfectly fine. It's not like, boom, all of a sudden your child's here and they're not. So I think, be careful what we see on the internet. It's not always true, everything that we see on the internet. And if at all you're ever concerned, get your child checked out if there's any kind of breathing issues, especially after water exposure or anything along those lines, for sure. Yeah, great point.
It's so interesting that you bring up, what we see on the internet. And I know in your field, I'm a mom, right? And I Google it before I come in and I give myself all that anxiety. But one thing that I will say about the like swim industry, and we talk about, it's a little tangent that I'm going off on, when we talk about like how the internet or AI is going to take over. I was like, but I don't know if it could take over swimming. If you get in this situation, it's like, teach me how to swim in 2 minutes. Like, I don't think Claude or Chat can teach us how
Right.
to do that. So that's why we contribute what we tribute to it. Okay, so here we go. Our next slide, we're going to talk about layers of protection, right? So as you watch this next segment, notice how no single strategy stands alone, right? So again, prevention, that's going to be our keyword this entire evening. Effective drowning prevention depends on multiple layers working together because not one layer is perfect on its own. We're going to have, if we have a supervision, we can have lapse. A barrier or a fence around a pool, it can fall. Skills, our kids are still developing skills. They don't have it all figured out. And our emergencies, we need preparedness. We need to be ready for them. So the concept behind this layers of protection is that each one has each other's back, right? Collectively, we're as safe as we can be. But if one fails, the other one is supposed to take over. So let's take a look at this video. So I really like this video because it definitely is showing us how, one of the strongest ways to prevent drowning, it comes in these layers, right? And our kiddos are supposed to be inquisitive. They just naturally are going to do this. So it's up to us to just make sure we get that environment right for them. The barriers help prevent unsupervised access. We may be doing something else, and again, they might wander. But if we have that fence up with an alarm, that's one barrier that can definitely prevent them from being harmed. And then again, us actually being attentive, being alert. Sometimes as families, we go and we'll go to a family gathering or a family party. And so many times we think someone is watching. We thought, or we think there's an adult that's watching, but we should slow down and have the conversation and say, hey, Uncle Rick, you are the designated swim watcher. You are watching these kiddos in the water, and mom and dad may go over here and have a little fun with the rest of the family, but you're the designated watcher. That is an additional layer that we have to put up for our kiddos. And again, the competencies, exposing them to water so that they know what to do and how to self-rescue and save themselves if they were to fall in. The life jacket, the adding the extra protection in the water, this is so important to me because a lot of times we go out on the open water and we don't think we should really put a life jacket on. We think, oh, we know how to swim, we're going to be okay. And this isn't just for the kiddos. Intuitively, parents will put one on a kiddo, but for us, sometimes we don't put one on. But again, we're preparing ourselves for what could potentially happen. If you're in the water, if you don't have that life jacket on, we need to depend on our water treading skills. We need to depend on our floating skills. But that life jacket can give us so much more opportunity to get out of a bad situation. So if I can stress something to you, especially because, we're on the island and we have the water, when you go out, please take the time to put on life jackets. And then again, we need to be prepared. We have to know our CPR. We should have a plan if something happens. And this takes communicating with each other. Okay, water competency. I keep saying water competency, and I know as parents, sometimes we think swim lessons, when will my kid learn how to swim? And this is a slide that I really enjoy having a conversation with you guys about. I'm going to talk about like what water competency really is. We'll talk about, how to get water competency through the private lessons or group lessons, and then something that Safety Swim has called a Safer Swimmer Promise. So when we think about swim education, what we really are talking about is our kiddos being competent in the water. That means them being able to do more than just move through the water. Sometimes we'll say, hey, can the kids swim? And we see them move, but that doesn't necessarily mean competence. It's about your child, how they respond, how they orient themselves, how they manage breathing, and how they react how they react in uncomfortable situations or unexpected situations. So that's taking us back to the prevention part. When we're thinking about learning, we want to make sure that they can recall these skills in situations that they're unfamiliar with, right? So water competency includes things like floating, breath control, safe movement from the water, recognizing where safety is, returning safely to a wall, demonstrating age-appropriate self-rescue skills. So when you're going into a Learn to Swim program, yes, we want our kiddos to learn how to swim, but we want them to be water competent. We want them to know where is safety, how to self-rescue, can they breathe? That's going to get your kiddo competent. And again, that's where prevention comes in for drowning. So the goal is not simply to have the kiddo enjoy the water. We want them to enjoy the water, but it's to build practical competency and have safer responses in aquatic environments. So our private lessons, they're incredibly effective for kiddos who need individualized pacing, the extra confidence, or if they have fear or a little anxiety or need attention. It's a good way for instructors to slow down or speed up the progress. You get, feedback for your kiddo. So you know your kiddo and you know if a private lesson will be good for their competence or not, for their competency in water or not. And then we have group lessons. And I love group lessons because group lessons to me is what translates more to like a real world environment. Usually a kiddo is with cousins and brothers and sisters, so they need to learn how to orient to that environment, right? So with the group lessons, you really do get that consistency over and over again. You get repetition, you get peer learning, and then they get comfortable in a structured aquatic setting. So at Safety Swim, we have something that's called a Safer Swimmer Promise, to where we're not just looking at whether your child can swim. We have a measurement that's based on safety outcomes. Okay, so one thing that we think is important for parents to understand is that there's a difference between performance and learning. So we can be in a class, and what you're seeing during that class or in that lesson, that's performance. It's not always learning. So your child can perform a skill one day, or your child can perform a skill one day, but what we want to know if they can perform that skill in a different environment. So that's where our Safer Swimmer Promise comes in, because then we get to assess if learning is transferring to them and if they can really like self-rescue. So again, a child may be successful performing a skill one day or in one environment, but true learning means, can that skill be retained, repeated, applied again later, especially in unfamiliar or stressful situations. So I want you to think about that as you approach your Learn to Swim program, and parents have the question, when will they learn how to swim? And if we approach that armed with the information of what learning actually is, not just performance, not just skill acquisition, but can these skills and can they be transferred to another environment? Meaning, if we are on the boat and if they, fall off, do they know how to self-rescue? Because they learned that in class. Do they know how to tread water? Because that's something that they learned. So that's the approach I want parents to take when they go into their local swim schools or they have their kiddos in classes and they think about learning. What you're seeing in class, that is a performance. Learning is transferring, retaining and transferring it through environments. Next question we get a lot, aside from when will my kiddo learn how to swim, is the age that we should start to expose them to water. The American Academy of Pediatrics, they generally recommend around the age of 1. And it really is also dependent on like how comfortable they are in the water, any health considerations, depending on their developmental readiness. That is how we can gauge whether you want to expose them to water. But exposing them to water young has so many benefits. It's just the familiarity of it. It gives them confidence. They become accustomed to that environment, and overall, over a period of time, it's going to help them develop the skills to be able to learn how to swim and learn how to self-rescue a lot sooner if you have early exposure to water. Did you want to chime in there? I know anytime I start bringing up pediatrics, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm going to take a break and let you talk.
Absolutely, yeah. Why don't you catch your breath for a second? And
Thank you.
no, I'm just what brings to mind is for myself, my kids are now 21 and 18, and we started with Safety Swim 20 years ago, and my son was 1 year of age. And I think you want to create habits, routines, which becomes a way of life. So if they're comfortable in the pool, they're learning the skills that they need to learn, right off the bat. I think that's really key. One of the other things that you mentioned in the previous slides, I love the designated water watcher concept. I think I'm pediatrician for 28 years, and I try to avoid fatalities as best as we can with anticipatory guidance. That's why we recommend vaccines, babies sleeping on their backs. We recommend car seats. But the swimming is such a key thing, and this is the time of year where I start talking about it. And the avenues or the areas where I do see these near drownings happen is at parties in someone's backyard where there's a pool or someone else's private pool. And what I try to tell parents is, we just have to be cognizant and sort of mindful about having our child there. I love the video with the cell phone distraction, because I think that's one of the primary distractions that we have these days. But I always tell couples, when you're at a party, don't assume the other person's watching your child. And I think that's where the confusion comes into place. That's where the designation is really important. And also, if you pass your child off to somebody else, especially the husbands, I like to say, because, you say, all right, hon, I got to go to the bathroom. Can you watch Johnny? And don't just run off. Make sure he acknowledges that, yes, I am responsible. Make him repeat it 3 times. Yes, I am responsible for little Johnny, because, the assumption is maybe he was on his phone, maybe he was talking with somebody else about whatever. And then next thing you know, mom comes back and, she's like, well, where's Johnny? And dad's like, oh, kind of. So that's the sort of thing. And then in private pools, and well, both types of pools, make sure, because other children will leave the gates open theoretically, so there's always that chance. That's one of the things I always preached. I grew up on the South Shore of Long Island, Jones Beach, private pools, swimming the Mediterranean, and there has to be a respect and a knowledge, and sort of, again, with the anticipatory guidance, always try to picture these things beforehand, and showing that, I think, is really great. And thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for letting me catch my breath a little bit.
There we go.
Okay, so yes, Felix, we can go to the next slide here. Okay, so again, this whole thing is about prevention, and we have certain populations that are just at higher risk at drowning than other populations. So I do want to take a moment to talk about this, especially if there are any parents that can identify in these groups, so that you can be armed and be aware with how to make sure that your kiddos can stay safe. So one of the populations is our kiddos with autism, children with autism spectrum disorder. They're at an increased risk, particularly to wandering, elopement, their attraction to water. You have your regular kiddo who will see water and they'll run to it. And this increases with kiddos who are on the autism spectrum. And I just want to tell you a statistic here. Our kiddos in this community, they are 160 times more likely to pass away through drowning than their peers. So this is why it's so important that we also give our kiddos who are in the autism community access to the water as well. Safety Swim has a program where we have open swim programs, and we partnered with the NSASA, Nassau Suffolk Society of America. And they come to open swims, and their families come, and their caregivers may get in the water with them, and they get exposure to the water. Again, they're happy, they're excited, but sometimes we tend to think that certain communities, maybe they may not respond well to water instruction, but the key is to expose them to it. We have to continue to expose them to it. And we have seen progress where they can learn how to swim, they can learn how to self-rescue. Just because they may not be communicative, they are learning the skills, and it takes repetition over and over again. So along with those layers of protection, even kiddos in our artistic community, we need to make sure that we expose them to water and give them a pathway to swimming education as well, swimming competency as well. The second group that I want to talk about is our Black community. So our Black children, they have drowning incidents at 6 times the rate of their white counterparts. And a lot of this has to do with access. Their communities may not have a pool. Sometimes it has to do culturally. Their moms or dads did not learn how to swim, so they did not learn how to swim. And again, we're looking at this from a prevention way. So one of the ways, if we want to talk about drowning prevention, we have to talk about access as well. We have to make sure that all children have access to water competency. We never want to look at swimming as a luxury, right? It's not. It's a life skill. It's something that you literally carry with you for the rest of your life. And as we get older, it's definitely something we want to do because it's amazing, for our bodies and our joints. So this life skill, we want to make sure that all of our kiddos have access to it. And when I talk about the autism community as well, they go through a lot of not having access due to funding as well. So it's important that we get involved in our community to help all of the kiddos who, need assistance, I should say. And this is going to help us with, more communities who are at risk than we would think. Now, here we go, parents. Now I get to talk to you a little bit more and give you some guidance and some tips, okay? So let's start here. when we're around the pools, and we talked about this a little bit before, we always want to designate a water watcher. We also want to avoid distractions. We want to secure access points, and we want to use those Coast Guard jackets. I can't stress those enough. Make sure they're 100% regulated by the Coast Guards. So we're finding you are in charge. We're avoiding distractions for that person. We're making sure the access points are secured to the water, and then we're having those jackets, especially if we are in open water. Another area that I want to talk to you guys and give you guys some practical tips is bath time. It's so easy to get into an unfortunate situation with bath time because we may need to grab a towel. Our phone may ring. Someone may be at the door. And you know what I need you to do? I need you to put kiddo on your hip and walk right with them to get that towel, or right to them to get the door. We're not leaving them in the water. And sometimes we have the chairs or the assisted support in the water that holds them up. That is not a substitute for supervision. We have to be vigilant. We have to make sure we're always watching our kiddos. And then we want to make sure that we actually drain the tub after we give them a bath. And if we can close the doors again so they don't have access to the bathroom. All of these are preventative measures that we need to take. But most importantly, it's about our attention to our kiddos and the access that we give them. If we think about those, always being attentive and closing out access, we've solved half of the problem. Now, when we think about water safety, this is a family thing. This isn't just for your kiddos. This isn't just for the younger people in the family. This is for everyone, because how you act around the water, your exposure to the water, it's going to prime to how your little ones are going to act around the water. If you feel fearful, or you're distracted, or you're unsure, our kiddos can absorb that. So just as much as it is important that they have exposure to the water, it's important for you to also have exposure to the water. I grew up with this personally. I grew up down south, and my mom did not know how to swim. We would go to the beach, and she would literally say, "Don't let the water go past your knees because I can't save you." And so I was like, why are we at the beach if I can't actually get in the water? But she had so much fear because she didn't know how to swim. And so she was holding me back from learning how to swim, as well as going and getting in the water. And even after I did learn how to swim, I found myself as an adult, when I had my daughter and we went to the beach, I was so high alert, I wouldn't let her go. I actually got her into beach volleyball because I was like, let's play in the stand instead of playing in the water. Because I didn't even realize that had gotten passed down to me, and I'm in this field, So it's so important that we realize that this is a family affair, right? And that's for moms and dads. If you do not know how to swim, we're going to get you some adult lessons. We're going to find some ways to get you exposed to the water as well. But we want to look at this collectively. It's not just the kiddos. It's important that you're able to model and replicate how they should feel, and what swimming should look like, and how comfortable and how fun it can be to learn how to swim. Okay, some key takeaways. If I leave you with anything, we should understand that drowning happens fast. It's silent, but it is preventable. And the prevention works best in multiple layers, whether that's our community, our pediatricians, our caregivers, our swim schools. We do this together. We do this collectively. And it takes small, consistent actions. We watch actively, we control access, we build our skills, we're using those life jackets, especially on open water, and we're knowing how to respond. This is so important for prevention, okay? And I'll finish up with some closing thoughts. So again, my hope for today is that you leave empowered, not scared, because we're armed with the information. So now we know what to do. Now we know how to protect our families. Now we know how to enjoy the water without having fear, because we're being responsible for our family. Prevention begins with awareness, but it becomes strongest when we have this consistent action. We work with healthcare guidance, it's our family behaviors, it's our swimming education. All of this is aligned so that we can have prevention and so that we can, have our kiddos living the most amazing life possible and learning how to swim. Okay. So that is my part. We're going to open it out. We can definitely open it up to questions. And thank you guys for sure for letting me, talk about something that I'm so passionate about. And I'm definitely looking forward to I was about to call you Daniel. I feel bad calling you Daniel. I have to call doctors, doctors. I'm
Dr.
sorry.
Dan. Dr. Dan
Oh
is
my
perfect.
God.
Yeah. No, Shona, that was great. And it's everything that we talk about with our anticipatory guidance, especially with the summer coming. And I think again, the takeaways, I think for the parents for sure is, the designated water watcher, I think is key. Having our children comfortable in the water, respect the water, whether it be pools or oceans, lakes, that sort of thing. And getting those swimming lessons and the training where if God forbid we're in that position, we could, theoretically save our own life. Take a CPR course. I think, that's probably another great thing because, doing CPR, getting that oxygen through breaths plus compressions really makes a big difference initially until, the ambulance comes. And, for a parent standpoint, proactive instead of reactive, and realize when we're near water with our children, limit any kind of substance use, alcohol, things of that nature, because that also hinders our decision making. And I think that's the general stuff that I, would love to talk about at my well visits, especially with regards to anticipatory guidance. And again, my own kids, now they're 21 and 18, took safety swim for years, part of swim team there. And, I knew 20 years ago that it was, the right place, and it's made a big difference. I've done a couple of sprint triathlons. By the time my son was 8, we did triathlon together. And I think a lot of it has to do with the swimming comfort and that level. So, I wish everybody luck with the summer months. Take the right precautions, especially when it comes to pool safety. Enjoy it, enjoy it, enjoy it. It's supposed to be enjoyed, and with the right safety in place. So thank you.
If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. We'd be happy to answer them, and we'll read them off. We have one question here that says, we signed up for family swim lessons, family of 6 since March. We attended British Swim School, 4 adults, 2 kids. They teach rescue and safety lessons. Do you have a location in Westchester?
We do. Felix, correct me if I'm wrong. Is Rodney in Westchester? It's our Safe Splash. So Safety Swim has a parent company called Safe Splash, and they're our franchisees. We all have the same curriculum. Felix, is Rodney in Westchester for Safe Splash? And oh, you're typing. You don't want to talk.
Yeah, I typed the response in there. So we do have a Safe Splash location in Yonkers and also in Northern Bronx as well. So using our website, you can link to Safe Splash or safesplash.com directly, and you'll be able to find that information. And then for Far Rockaway, that would actually be in our either Oceanside location if you wanted to head towards the east, or if you wanted to head more north going towards our Garden City or New Hyde Park location.
Okay, and we have, what age do you recommend starting swim lessons? So there's a difference between the lessons and the water exposure or just getting comfortable with the water. Again, pediatrics, our physicians recommend starting around 1. You can get in the water and get your kiddo acclimated to the water. Safety swim starts as young as 4 months. And again, this is all water acclimation. We're not swimming. This is getting them comfortable, getting a little splash in their face or shoulders in the water. We're moving their legs for them so that they can start the feeling how it feels to kick their legs. So definitely 1 year to actually start lessons, but acclimating to the water, you can start a little bit younger, getting them adjusted to the water. Any more questions?
Oh,
We got
one more
someone
thing.
typing. Oh, thank you. You're welcome, Danielle. Okay. Okay, I'll give it over to you, Ariel.
Thank you guys so much for such an important presentation and conversation. We will be sending out a follow-up email with some resources that Shiana had sent over to me, and that should be coming out to everyone who registered in the next day or two. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Allied Physicians Group. We are happy to always provide as much information as you need. And we are all here for you. We hope that everyone has a safe, fun, and happy summer.